rebars, we will need to do this rearrange of marks, always anti-clock, unless you are forced to store some marks. If you want to protect some marks, let's say you deliver to the site and they are already ordered, you can do this and protect some marks with lock. However, in most situations, you just unclick lock and hit OK. And see, here are the results. We start with rebar number 1 and we end with rebar 23. It's a big reduction, and even if we do this option after we finish the detailing, it's no problem. It will update the drawings. However,
can I ask one question?
Yes.
In the bar bending schedule, here,
Yes.
here DPB2 is written. What is it?
I think it's a bar diameter, and I think this is
Bar.
Yes, DB2.
Pin.
It's a pin diameter. Yes, it's
pin diameter. Okay.
Pin diameter. Yes. But
Yeah.
it's strange we use different reports. This looks a bit stranger than the ones in Romania. In Romania, they used a bit different. Okay, this is for American standard. There are more different ways of placing it, different templates. You choose the one that is closest to what you would need. However, I want to talk a bit about this report to avoid future mistakes. It's really important to know how this works. I strongly recommend never to leave them associative, although they might be interesting that they are associative, so they are live. They consume a lot of resources. So if you leave this live, you can also get this unfortunate surprise. Now we have 23 marks, starting 1. But if I activate this drawing, I place it on yellow, you will see what happens. Okay, there are some marks from other standard, but look what happened. We got to mark 33, and we also have the reports from the column, which is not okay. And if I by mistake, and also you'll see we have doubled marks. We have 18 twice, 17 twice. So this will automatically update to any reinforcement it finds. So you need to develop a strategy on what reinforcement we will place on a specific drawing. So when you get the list, you get the list for that specific drawing. So when you do renumber, it renumbers any active reinforcement in your drawing. So this is why I strongly recommend it to go with longitudinal beams and then transversal beams to make sure that your bill of material is dedicated to that cage. And what I said was also not to keep them live, because look, if I right click and say ungroup, it will explode in a 2D construction, which of course is flexible, it's editable. And now if I do the same trick, I activate the column with its reinforcement, it's actually no problem. My report, it's not affected. Of course, my report is dead, it's not live. So my recommendation also is, once you finish the detailing, because while detailing you might encounter different problems or solve different issues, always before plotting regenerate this list. So don't keep associative leaves. However, before plotting finally, do again this list so you make sure you get the latest version. Okay, now I will start here detailing. Okay, so I will create a section. Now another advice, you will need the grid. If you have the grid activated and you have either columns or walls that are inside the grid, you will get automatic grid lines in the sections. But that is the condition, to have them activated and to have columns or walls. 3D is not okay, so they won't. Okay, I don't know why in this situation they didn't. Let me try again something else. So if I select like this and hit escape, okay, they will place the axis. I don't know why they didn't place it firstly there, but I can then copy them and it's pretty much the same thing. Okay. Or I can use this one and just leave it entirely and then decide how much limitations I need to provide. So, and this way I keep the axis. So I remove this one. Don't need them. Now, this drawing will be 150. I think you will use the same convention. So this is, the scale is 150 and the others is 120. Or how do you?
150. 15.
150 this one, and the other, this one, is still
15.
115. Okay. So first 150, the elevation. I select here 150. Select this, and then also elevation point. Select this. So it will create. However, in some situation it's a bit irrelevant, so I have to do some cleanup of the drawing. Usually it's enough to have a top and a lower, and the others should be cleansed. Then, after I finished, of course I can do some small adjustments of the length of the axis of the grid. Okay, I'll leave them like this because I want to place the bars there. Then, what I'm going to do is sort the stirrups. So the stirrups should have some variation, of course. I can do it here. For instance, here, as we discussed yesterday, we can have 0.15, and on other areas to have less. So exactly the same workflow we did yesterday for the column can be applied to the beam. So you decide which are the critical areas, and then even in the detailing stage decide where we should change the stirrups at a bigger pace. Okay, and then I will start detailing the stirrups with this dimension label line. Click here, and I will choose this dimension line, which will mention the distance for it, and then I can choose what information I need on the left side. So I place the mark 12, phi 8, and 10. However, you can also add some signs. So in this area you didn't use, but I see here some notations. What does this CC mean?
Center.
Center. Okay. Oh, okay, understand. So you want the dimensions to be center-centered, or what does this center mean?
Spacing of stirrups.
Okay. So that is, and this at, what does it mean?
About.
Okay. Okay, it's an approximation. Okay.
Not up.
So I understand here are about 100 stirrups in the center. Or
8 dia.
yes.
100 is the spacing between the stirrups.
Oh, okay. It's around 100 spacing. Oh, okay, I understand. Here we have, first of all, we have the mark number. Then we can add number of pieces of stirrups, then a diagonal, and then the spacing. We can control the symbol for the spacing, and we can control the order of it, and we can also add a distance. So we can add this. CNC is only for intermediate, I understand, but you can control this. So for instance, if you don't like this slash, you can control it from here. You go to reinforcement, representation, or here label, and you can decide which symbol you need between the placing. It can be a minus, it can be anything, even a story or at or whatever, and the program will do. So in case you need this, and also can change the way it measures. So you can select the unit. If you need millimeters, you can get millimeters with unit or without unit. If I do any change in this area where I can control the order of the detailing and the symbols, I will need to update. So in order to update what I already did, because what I did is valid now, for the further detailing, we have these settings. But for all detailing, in order to update it, you need to select and go to properties and update something. Update this label, not the dimensional line, but rather the label. Uncheck something, and you can apply this update. So this can be useful, what I've shown you, in case some of colleagues do it one style and then you together decide you need something else. However, Allplan doesn't work with that around. The program will say exactly the spacing of the stirrups. So in 1.1 meters, I have exactly 12 feet 8 stirrups. Then there's a distance which is lower than, is somewhere between 100 and 150, where I'll have 11. Uh, the dimensions I need to complete can be added at the final. So this is quite, it's a 15, but in other situations it might be less, it might be between the spacings. So Allplan will say this is the spacing required for 12, 15 with this uh, properties. So detailing is just picking these options. You have several ways of detailing them. So offering this information, you have to decide. There are dimension lines. There can be a comb, or I'll show you how we can change. So what options do we have for detailing? Of course, we see here if we add the mark, we might, especially on smaller regions, we might not have space for 1 to 50 scale of detailing. Okay, but the process is quite fast. You just have the function activated, you click on the previous dimension line, and this is how you keep them online. And once you decide which properties are relevant, you just place them, and this is how we establish the placements. You can use it as an intermediate option just to have a control of how many stirrups you have, and underneath build a 2D construction that can do this example. So you can just complete the options, but you get the information from this automatic detailing. It's automatic from point of view of information, but for placing, a human needs to do displacement to be able to be read. We don't necessarily need to have all of these represented. So if we want to simplify a bit the drawing and not show all stirrups, we have the option of modifying place displace mode, and we can choose just a few stirrups. So I choose displacement and say these 3 are relevant. Also here, I can choose just a few, and in this way, the one who builds after our plans understand somehow the distances, and the areas are marked by the upper dimension lines. So this is an alternative of not drawing all the rebar, as indeed it might cover some vital areas, and we might not be able to see some reinforcement or some concrete parts. maybe 3 is better. So basically, how you'll need to work in Allplan to be efficient, you need to divide your work per operation. So if I want to do placings, I place everything I need. If I need to hide bars, I activate the function and start hiding the stirrups I don't need, so I don't have to look for function. This is something to remember. In Allplan, once we launch a function, it remains active, and until we hit escape, it will work without reactivating it. Once we deliver the information regarding the stirrups, we'll need to build the execution schema for it. So I use this. The difference between partial schema and full schema is that in full schema, it reads from the entire drawing file or drawing files that are active, the specific bar, and it will count only once. So it counts once all the rebars, while the other scheme, this one, the partial schema, will count the bars that I select. So I select here the bars and place them. Of course, some fitting has to be done because the program places a description at the beginning, and if I decide to do any modification, as you've seen, I can do it on the schema. So basically now I have to pick up bars and lower them, so they understand what they have to add there. So this is basically how we do it in Europe, and how Allplan is easy to do. Also, it helps me understand how the rebars change and to know how many cross sections do I actually need. So basically, if I lower these rebars, I can leave all the stirrups to have exactly how the cage will look in reality, so with all bars, because how the bars enter will be here. Some fitting needs to be done, of course, so we won't leave all labels randomly, but basically we'll start from one end and we'll cover all the bars. The main advantage is you don't have to know the marks. This is something stored by Allplan. And the biggest advantage is if I renumber marks or do modifications, the labels will automatically adapt. So this is where we beat the normal 2D workflow. We might need to use some
Or
filter. Yes?
you are in between pushing the assembly button.
What?
You are pushing the assembly button.
I'm excuse me, I'm pushing what? The same?
Uh,
Ah,
assembly button.
the same bar. It's 11.8
No, no.
or
Just the toolbar.
yes.
You are operating this button.
No, I never pushed assembly.
Okay,
I
okay.
only used this partial schema function. Actually, I can do this. I can hide the bars, and there is this repeat menu that shows all the latest 20 functions I used. So I can pick functions from there, and this is another way of working with Allplan, so you don't have to look through the bars, especially if they are in different menus. Okay. If I wanted to avoid this, you see we have two bars that are not placed in the same region, but uh, I want it to be only one with two, not two bars with one. I have to say again partial schema. I can say repeat partial schema, and I have to make sure both are selected, and we get one as marking, so I have more room for detailing. And let's finish this part. Full schema, no, not full schema, but partial schema.
So where the full schema is to be utilized?
Full schema is useful only if you want to give the one that delivers you the steel the bar that is used in the active drawing. So this is full schema may only be useful in the situation uh, where the one that delivers the steel, let's say they make the steel in a warehouse and they are not interested in positioning the steel, they only need to know what steel they need to produce, you can give them full schema. But full schema is also included in the report, so basically you rarely use full schema. Maybe for
Okay.
slabs, if you use span reinforcement, they don't allow you to use partial schema, the way Allplan works. So maybe in that situation you can also, but most of the time we will use partial schema because partial schema allows us to select how many rebars do we need. So we avoid mistake. Uh, let's say again partial schema. And also if you hold shift when selecting partial schema, you make sure you select more than one bar. You select its placement in that section. So I use a lot this shift option. Okay, now I have this information now, and this will also have a label. So I'll say here right click label view, and I can say this to be elevation grid 2. And then I'll double right click to pick up the text function, and I'll say scale 150 with a lower dimension. And then I start doing the transversal cross sections. I'll start like this. Yes.
Can you do the labeling of the beam mark? Actually, beam has already been marked in the during the preparation.
Yes. If I right click here, I should have the label of beam. But the beam needed to be marked. So if I go in attribute, I see here 1B6. If that is the marking, it's 1B6. If I go here, it's 1B7. So basically once I need to do this, here there's also a mistake I identified. We see here that the beam is here, so I need to do this correction now. It's no problem if I'm doing in the detailing stage, as it will update the drawing, the 3D model and everything. So now I can do both changes, meaning moving the longitudinal reinforcement and the stirrup using just this filter for steel grade. Okay, pick up this one and change it here. So this stretch entities also acts like a move function. So I move them and corrected everything. So all the information you give, you just say right click, label, and you decide which attributes are relevant. So I can also add cross-section name. And then perhaps add some text leader and obtain it. So just right click, label, and decide which information is relevant. If only the name is relevant, we just pick up the name. And while keeping the action, we have the names for the beams. And
Now,
then,
can
yes,
you just please hold on. Can you do marking of this cross member transverse beam in this section which is shown here? Can I show here?
what do you refer?
No, on the all plan.
Yes,
This is the beam.
yes.
This beam. Can we mark the here? Label it for here.
So you,
This is the
I'm listening.
label it.
This one?
Yeah.
Yes, it's the same way.
Okay.
So basically, the associative views are just views that go through the model. So they label what they find, because if I decide to do any modification on this beam from here, it will modify the entire project. So it will, wherever this beam is placed, it will get the modification. So this is why we can, this is the advantage of working in 3D. We get access to exactly the same modification. And if one of your colleagues does the modification once, and you're working on a workgroup manager, so all of you work on the same project in real time, you'll get the same modification in real time. So this is a main advantages of using associative views. They're only views of a 3D model. Okay, so I think I'll go to creating the other sections. So these ones, they are on a different scale, right? Or the same?
Yeah.
Okay. So once I finish all that was needed on 150, I will start doing the cross section while still being scale 1 to 50. When you are detailing, you are watching from right or from left this elevation?
From bottom to top.
From bottom to top and from right to left, or
Left to right.
left to right? Okay, you do the other way. We mark as from right to left, but it's no problem. So I just select this elevation. This is the target I'm looking at, the yellow circle, and I position myself on the left. So if I click anywhere on the left, I'm in the left and watching towards the circle. And now, having all these rebars outside, I can decide how many cross sections do I need. I'll look at the number, and you said section 1, 1. I can do exactly like this. So, and in order to reset the sections, I have to go here and say 1. And then I will place somewhere, it doesn't matter where, and I have to know which beam I'm actually detailing. Why does this happen? Because when I create an associative view, it marks the entire view as big as the slab. Now I'm looking from left to right in elevation 2. So if I'm here on the left and look at from left to right, I can see the middle. So I need the middle one. So this is the one relevant. If I am not sure, I pick the correct one. It's enough to select here, and if it goes red, it means I selected the correct beam. So here is a representation. If I need to do any modification regarding depth, everything is the way I've shown. I'm going next with others. So based on these bars, I know how many sections are relevant for me, and I don't need to place them, let's say, very in a very orderly fashion or aligned already, because they are somehow irrelevant in points of detailing until we change the scale. What I was saying was that we only have to pay attention here to not to do the section where we have an overlap, because we'll see 2 bars, and where we should place the endings, because according to the endings we get this positioning of the triangles. From this point of view, it's irrelevant where we place them, as the detailing should be 1 to 15. So it's not important how they look on 1 to 50 at this stage. On 1 to 50, it's important only where we place the triangles to get a nice representation. So I'll do some extra here. Place them here. Remember, it's the middle one. Place the detailing as well. And then just do some extra tools. There might be more. And make sure I don't do the section through an overlap to avoid having more bars in that cross section than I need to represent. Okay, so we can add in what?
Shorter section scale is different.
Yes, yes,
Cross section.
yes. This one will be 1 to 15, but this
Yeah.
is the workflow. So when creating the sections, I need to be 1 to 50. And why is that? Because I need to place the triangles as I want to see them. It's really important that I
Oh.
do this. And then when I want to detail the cross sections, they will be at their proper detailing scale. So this is the order to have good results in the end. I'll keep them like this. Now, this, as we discussed, need to be 1 to 15. There's one big observation here. It's vital on Allplan that you don't have this ticked. So dimensions should never be automatically updated. Although it might sound nice, it's not nice at all to get them automatically update, because if they get automatically update, when you change the scale and do a movement, they will always update your dimensions, and usually the automatic dimensions are not satisfying. They can be satisfying for all these cross sections, but in other situations they might not be. So it's better to control the automatic dimension manually than to leave the software. So please keep in mind never to have this ticked, always turned off. Now I'm going to 1 to 15. You see here we don't have 1 to 15. However, we have a solution. We just go to view and we will change the scale. Just a second. Reference scale, and I'll manually input 15. So now it's 1 to 15, and I need to make here, do some cleaning here. I'll say dimension views and select dimension line. Select everything, and I get some dimension lines and then elevation points as well. Are you sure it's 1 to 15 and not 20? Or this is the scale you want for these details? Or 25?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So once I do this, I will need to rearrange them a bit. So I just move them, let's say in order, because at the beginning I just place them around. Three. Okay, I won't do repetitive work here, but these are the elevations and the sections. Okay, there are only two left. And what you need to keep in mind is that these will look nice only on 1 to 15. So if I am now working on 1 to 15, the elevation I just worked on doesn't look nice, because I will control this in the layout. In the final layout, I'll just say this is 150 and this is 115. So basically here I'll need also to add some subtitle with the scale 1 to 15. The detailing is good to be done automatically. The only problem is it gives too much information. So in some situation, if you consider some points irrelevant, you just delete them or move them along so they don't interfere. Now, for detailing purposes now, we can use different styles, and I'll show them what we have. We go to engineering. It's the same tool we use for the stirrups, dimension line label. And I can select this, and what I would use would be a fan. So a fan is dynamically linked to those, and you can decide what the label contains, meaning number of rebars, number of mark, and also you can decide how many lines do you need. So this automatic means you get all the lines. You can also have only the start and the end line. You see there are only 2 marked, but it says 4. Or you can have an intermediate as well, or you can do manual, which means you can choose only one, or you can decide how many lines do you need to depict this reinforcement. Personally, I use automatic, and I don't look much at marks. So here we had that rebar, and then I can, for instance, for these ones, select them and place them somehow here. This one, and this one wasn't placed correctly. It was that one which just told me it's not necessary, but I'll place it somewhere. So it was not properly placed in 3D. It can be a bit not so precise if we detail like this. This is why I'm going to show you what other options do we have. So in this situation where we have a little bit too many different rebars, we can use another style. We either use comp, which will somehow link the bars with some lines. So I can complete this information like this. Or we can use something else. For instance, we can use mark symbols, select, and we get mark symbols for everything. So mark symbol should work like this. Let's go in this area where we have, so there are 4 marks. You can control the size of the circle, or if you want it to be in a box, you can also change it in the options of the detailing. So you can decide if you want to do some changes, but this can be a solution, especially when you have on 2 layers or you have on different placing. So they all read the bar that we select, and you just pick up the circle. If any modification is done, the labels will update automatically. So this is the advantage. The disadvantage is that you have to align them. So it might be, I recommend working with marks as they are quite easy, and they are really precise. So like this, I can place 9 are on the corners, and intermediate we can go with this one and this one.
How we can change the circle to square?
It's quite easy, and we can do it at any stage. The problem is if I change it, for the next bar they will place square as well. So in order to change it, we go to options, reinforcement, label, and you have here mark, size, and layout. We can even lower the mark. It can be 1, 2, 3. It cannot be 1.5. And here we can select whether we like rectangle, ellipse, and we can also add prefix should you need. So should you need a letter in front of the mark, you can choose this. I'll say rectangle, and now we'll have rectangle. So when I go to dimensions, I have here boxes, which are easier to fit than the circles. So here also we get okay, we get some marks, but we'll need to somehow arrange them accordingly. So there is some work to do, some drafting work to arrange them, but the information is correct. So in case we get some modification that needs to be done on the 3D model, you will get an update of the detailing. But here, this bar is linked with its label. The problem is now, as I mentioned, if I do any change in the detailing way or standard, it will not affect what I already did. So my work is not affected, and in case I want it to be affected, I have to do a small trick. So in order to replace these with rectangles, so already done work, I have to select it, go to properties, and here it's about labels. Not this label. No, label should be. I have to do a change for it. Any change will update the mark. So if I change, for instance, thickness and hit OK, and then let's say pick the thickness back, it will update the marks with the latest settings. So this is a small trick you can use. Normally we don't leave the setting with boxes because it affects also all other labeling. So this can be good here, but if I, for instance, want to label here with the other styles, the conf, you see here now I also have box. If that doesn't bother you, you can just keep it box and you'll have boxes instead of circles. If I decide to switch back to circles, I go in properties, reinforcement label, choose circle, and I go now with circles again. And for instance, fan. You see that I also decreased the size to 1, the size of the mark in comparison to the other. So basically this is how we detail reinforcement. We can also use for the stirrup. And also it's nice if the stirrup differs. You can place it once at least, the opening. So guess partial schema for the stirrup. You can either choose to have a closed segment, or you can open any segment you would like. You can decide what you would like to label. So for instance, if you don't want the bending pin to be on the bending schedule, you can rather place a text, you can do this. And for the others, I will just place the label so it's known that it's the same stirrup number 2. But in case I get stirrup number 4, I'll also need to place it. So we have 3 types of stirrups, so or 5 types of stirrups even if in reality I first only created once. So partial schema for stirrups is necessary to be placed wherever I change the dimension of them. If I decide it was too wide, the flange, I just pick up these endings and closen up, so I get more space for drawing. So there is some work behind obtaining nice drawings, but the main advantage is the information is correct. So it's the information that is live, and as in any projects, or big or small, there will always be some changes from architecture, from HVAC. So it's important that we are able to do the changes in 3D or on the plans and get automatic update. So you work more at initial stage by doing in 3D, but if we analyze for the entire project where a lot of modification will be needed, and the fact that we get precise quantities, here we get the advantages. So we not necessarily have the biggest speed for the first draft, because in 2D you start drawing the execution plans and you imagine the 3D model, while in Allplan we build the 3D model, we reinforce and then generate the drawings. Okay. Do you have questions for this? I want to place it in a drawing, in a layout. So in a layout, we'll go like this, layout, and set up a page, whatever, A2, pick up a border. You said you managed to insert your title block. I say without, and what is important to complete what I told you regarding the styles? I only need to bring here the detailing. You will see that we'll have a surprise here. We have hatches for the concrete and hatches here. Why is that? It's because I have to mention to the software that I'm using drawing type reinforcement. So I pick up the drawing once, say reinforcement. Also I can impose black color, subordinate color 1. I'll just do a copy, maybe 2 copies of it. So I copy and then double click, hit change this to 50. And I see here 50. I need only these details. So I'll say of layout already placed and select this. Here it will be 1 to 15. And then place them on our drawing. If the drawing is not enough, I can widen a bit and bring this also here. And if I think I can have a better strategy, I can always go inside the drawing, right click, edit drawing files, and it'll go me straight to the target. And I can decide something like this to place them underneath to have more space and do some economy with the paper. And also we need a report. We can either create this reinforcement, you choose the one that fits best the need. Okay, I can place that here. Actually, I'm going to place it at a bigger scale. It's more advantage to place it like this, a reinforcement legend. Okay. Because it will be smaller if you generate it on a bigger scale. This is a reinforcement. I'll try to rearrange mark to see if any difference. No difference. I can either break page. I right click break page and have more spacing. It depends on what's left on the paper. And don't forget in the end to hit this ungroup, page break. So no, not page break, but ungroup this. And also we can have the option with Excel, but what is important to know is that the Excel allows us to select rebars, but it will not count only the selected, it will count the selected marks. So if I select 3 bars that are here and in the other beams as well, all are counted. So this count, although it allows selection, doesn't mean you'll get the reinforcement only for the selection. You'll get the reinforcement only for the selected marks that are placed in the entire drawing, not only the selection. Okay, we'll choose, let's say, a template. English. And this one is editable. We can either save it externally, let's say on desktop, copy paste it, or we can even use as Allplan object. Allplan meaning object linking and editing. It can be an external editable object, meaning that it's linked with the external file. So if you want to do manually some modifications, you can do them. So okay, I'll just shorten this a bit with stretch.
In this section, the smaller cross section has become longer, while we have selected the smaller size. Okay. The schema is there.
Yes. So you see that we work everything one-on-one, but all information has the same dimension. So texts have the same dimension, the titles are identical, and the sections are bigger because they are 1 to 15 as a par for 1 to 50. And that schedule can be brought like this: insert object, create from file, and we have the possibility of linking. So if we link with the file, everything is dynamic. So you can do update of the bending schedule, bar schedule. We have it here. Anyways, I place it on the drawing. So we have a bar schedule here that can be edited externally. For instance, if I go here on, sorry, the desktop is full, bar schedule, and I do, for instance, a rounding, let's say kilograms, and even place it with red and bold and whatever, and click save. I can go back to Allplan and just click on update, or establish when to update the link. So I can see a depth link, and it will read from that file. Of course, there's also the option to double click, and it will open it with Excel, and you can edit it right here. Create formulas, add something. So this is something I wanted you to know you can use. Okay, so basically this is the detailing workflow. It doesn't matter if it's a beam or column or whatever element.
Okay.